Alright, what's going on guys? It's Almond. Welcome back to another Wizard101 video. In today's video, as you guys can see by the thumbnail and title, it's how to go immune in Wizard101. And I'm going to be showing you guys all the builds on ice, fire, etc. on every single school. The only school that cannot go immune at the moment is Storm. Yes, you can go immune to certain schools on Storm, but you won't be able to have the universal build. So for the whole premise of this video, it's how to go immune for every single school, not just certain schools. You can definitely go immune on certain schools if you get the rings from Chrysalis Part 2, I believe, in Sardonyx. But for this purpose of the video, I'm going to be showing off how to go universal. So if you do enjoy this type of content, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, all that type of stuff. And let's actually get into it. So I spent a lot of time on stream, up to like 3-4 hours, trying to create all these builds for all the schools, and there could be some things I could be wrong about, right? I tested out, I did some math, whatever, and the ice build and everything like that I have on par, but if there's some stuff that's interchangeable, let me know in the comments below. And if you think there's something better or I'm wrong on something, just let me know, and I will be quick to respond to your comment. And I'll even make a separate video if I have to, if there are certain changes to be made, and that might be like some certain things. But from all the builds that I've created, you can still get 100% immune. Ice has it the best, of course, because Ice is a tanking school. The other schools kind of have a little bit of a downgraded build, but you still have access to that 100% immunity. So let's get into Ice. Ice, my character was 130 literally a day ago, and I haven't even slept. So I've been grinding non-stop, and I got my ice to 160, as you guys can see. So let's get into the build. So this is the main build that you're going to be using on your ice for the fact to go immune, because the ice shows it off the best, in my opinion. They can have 100% resistance, they can have 100%, almost basically 100% accuracy for their certain school spells that they're going to be using. You can also dual school for that reason being, and you can have 100% power pips. So this is the build I would recommend regardless, right? Like this would be 100%. You can still get 100% immunity with switching stuff around, but this would be the build that I would recommend to people if somebody was like, hey, I have access to all this stuff and I would just want to rock an immunity build. What would I use? This is what you would use. So I have 8.8k HP. I would have 9k HP if I socketed on some jewels, and you'll see what I mean by that, because I don't have anything socketed on currently, because I wanted to give you guys more of a raw build. But like I said, completely immune to every school, good accuracy for life and ice, because I'm gonna be dual schooling, and I'm gonna have school pips for life in case I want to cast Pigsy, which I'm gonna transfer over spell elements for. So there's that. Decent amount of crit for life because I have pins on, decent amount of block, and perfect power pips. So what is the build? What is the tier 1 build that you would rock on an ice? It consists of using the Jade Hood, the Ice Mire set or coat, and because it's the fact that I can sock it on pins, Rockstar Kicks, City Staff, Heartsteel, the Nightmare Amulet. Of course, you would sock it on stun resist jewels. The ring, Alyssa's chill band for the 3 extra res. Of course, sock it on whatever you want. The pet, subject to whatever you want to be on the body. The pet body does not matter. For this particular build, for the tier 1 build, the pet body does not matter. So you can put it on a hamster, you can put it on a gobbler pet, you can put it on literally any pet body that you want. But just make sure it is a 714 pet that has all selfish talents. As you guys can clearly see, it's all selfish, and then I just socketed on the missing one, which I believe was Mighty. The mount has to be the rock mount. The deck, I recommend the void deck. If you don't have the void deck, second option, Skyfarer. You lose HP though, but you do gain crit if you really care about having ice crit. I would still sock it on pip chance, because you do need the pip chance to have 100%. If you have neither of these, you're more than welcome to craft the Darkmoor deck. It does give you more copies, that's why I would recommend that. You do lose some HP, but you do have more copies, so you can use like more feints, and you can use more shields, whatever. So that is your third option. Fourth option is literally anything that has a triangle socket. I'm gonna be completely honest with you, because the whole point of the deck is just to have pip chance. So you can literally get like a Supreme deck or something like that and just socket on pip chance and just call it a day. You can use a rat deck if you want to. It's really just anything that has a triangle socket. Be honest, be completely honest. Just make sure it has a pip, of course, so you can start off with more pips. But beyond that, that's what I would recommend. So first option, Void. Second option, Skyfair. Third is Darkmoor, so you can get more copies. And then fourth option is literally anything that has a triangle socket. So that is the tier 1 build. Completely straightforward. This is ideally what you would want. And like I said, any type of pet body. So let's get that out of the way. That is what you would want. Now let's say, hey, I need there's some stuff I don't have, you know, maybe I want to switch some stuff around on my ice. I got you. This is the first option. The second option is this build. So the difference between this build is instead of using the Nightmare, I am using the Spooky Robe. Spooky Robe is from a bundle. Of course, that's why I put Nightmare as my favorite, because I do want to use a Spooky Robe on my other characters. So for that reasoning, I would use that on a different character. But with this build, you can still use a Spooky Robe, and basically everything else is exactly the same. You know, same thing as the pet. It doesn't matter. Set bonus does not matter, and you still have resist, which is exactly what you're going for. You still have good accuracy as well, good outgoing, good pips. I would literally recommend this to you as well, but the reason being is I like using the Spooky Robe on another character, so that's why I have this as a tier 2 option, because you're not going to be using Spooky Robe on an ice. I'm gonna be honest with you. The third option is just literally using the Jade Robe, but there's some caveats. So if you use the Jade Robe, your hat and boots are still remaining the same, your wand is still remaining the same, your theme is still remaining the same, amulet still being Nightmare. The ring though is really up to you. So you can take this off, for example, and you can still have 100% resist. So in my opinion is, if you don't have any of the stuff I previously mentioned in the tier 1 option and the tier 2 option, you don't have any of those, you're literally, for this tier 3 build, which I wouldn't recommend, but I mean, it just depends on what you have, right? So you would use the Void Ring for this one, because the fact that it gives decent power pips, and you'll be still chilling. So even if not, like, you can take this off, and as you guys can see, I still have 89 pips, but that's because I have the Void deck. But now let's say I don't have the Void Ring. Literally, you guys can just use anything that gives pips. I'm not gonna limit you on what to recommend or what you should use. Just anything that gives rings or gives decent power pips. To be honest, you can even just use the Aeon Ring if you don't want to farm for anything crazy. It's kind of just straightforward. So just use anything that gives good health and pips. That's why I recommend the Void Ring, but you can still be fine with this. It's just the difference is some damage and some crit. So yeah, but I would probably just use the Aeon just to save you guys some time. I wouldn't really worry about too much, or even the Merciless Ring is fine too, or even some rings from the Bazaar. So those are roughly the 3 builds I would recommend. So like I said, Nightmare first, then Spooky Robe, and then the Jade setup. But that's the whole spiel for ice. Now it gets a little bit more complicated down the road for the builds, and I'm not going to be transferring everything over between characters. I rather show everything on my ice, and I'll show you guys what I mean by I'm not going to transfer everything over to make it easier for us, if you guys are still with me. So that's everything for ice. Now let's move on to the next school. Okay, so now let's move on to the life build. The life build, we're going to make it on our ice because this is more of like a universal build. So you can use this build on life, balance, and myth. Not death though, but we'll go down the line. Same thing as fire. When we get to those parts of the video, you'll see what I mean by that. But let's do the life one. So the life one, you're still going to be using the Jade Hood. The tier 1 option, I would recommend Spooky Robe. Then with the Rockstar Kicks. Now, instead of using City Staff, you kind of have to use the Road Fury set bonus, or if you have the Cold Rider set bonus with the Gobbler pet, I believe, or the Thunder Road set bonus. any of those skulls, just make sure you match it with the pet. So for me, I matched it with the scarab, so I can have the Road Fury set bonus. So that's why I'm using the death metal skull. If you have the gobbler, like if you have all these talents on a gobbler instead, you would use the Cold Rider set bonus, so you would use the Road Legend skull to get that set applied. Or you can just even use the Thunder Road set, and that is an option as well. But basically anything from the Road Warriors pack. The theme is still the Heartsteel amulet. I'm gonna be using the Cerberus life, or the Cerberus ice amulet as reference, but you would be using the Nightmare amulet for life. The reason why I'm using the ice one for reference right here is because it gives 10 resist. The one for life is giving 10 resist as well. So for this build, I'm just using the Cerberus as an example, but you would use the Nightmare one, and you would have to go get it, of course, farm for it or open packs. That would be the best in slot. The ring, like I said before, for the ice build as well, it is up to you. But for this build, I would recommend getting yourself the Void Ring from raids. The Void Ring is really good in my opinion. The Void Ring gives 16 outgoing, and it also gives you 25% power pips. So if you were using the tier 1 build, which I'm showing you guys right now with the spooky robe, you would have 97% power pips. So you can't have perfect power pips on a life with this build, but you will have access to that immunity, which is the whole reason of this video. So you will have 97% power pips. That's what I would use for the ring though, the Void Ring, the 160 version. The pet, like I said, make sure it matches the one that you're using for your wand. In my case, I'm using the Road Fury set bonus, so I can get the extra 3 res. The pet, or the mount, you're going to be using the rock mount. And the deck, like I said, Void one is, my opinion, the better one. If you don't have Void, Skyfarer. If you don't have Skyfarer, craft the Darkmoor deck for more copies. If you don't have any of those 3, option 4 is literally just use anything that has a triangle socket and that gives you a pip. Any of those are good, but those are my recommendations when it comes down to deck. So that is the tier 1 option for life. Now let's say you don't want to use a spooky robe on your life. You're like, hey, I don't want to use this, or I don't have it. You would switch to Jade robe instead, so you'd still be using the Jade hood. You still would be, now instead of using spooky robe, you're going to be using the Jade robe. Your boots are still going to be the Rockstar kicks. Your wand, like I said, is still going to be that set bonus with your pet. You still would be using Heartsteel. You still would be using your Nightmare amulet. Your ring would still be the Void Ring, as I stated before. That gives you 25%. Your pet, still 714. Mount would still be the rock mount. And your deck, like I stated before, it still would be Void, Skyfarer, Darkmoor, or anything that has a triangle socket. And you still have 101 or 102 technically resist. So that is what I would recommend for the tier 2 option. If you don't want to use your spooky robe, that is the build that you would be rocking if you just care about having resist. Of course, I don't have the ring on, so if you had the ring on, you would have 94% power pips, and you would have 101 resist on your build. So that's the tier 2 option. That is the whole life build. Now let's move on to balance. Now let's go to the tier 1 balance build. So tier 1 balance build is literally the exact same thing as life. You're going to be using the Jade hood, spooky, Rockstar kicks, skull, as I stated before, the Heartsteel, then your Nightmare amulet for your school, which would be the balance one in this case. Ring would be the Void one. If you have it equipped, you would have 93 or 95% power pips, or anything. You can just use anything that gives you power pips. Pet, like I said, make sure it matches your wand. Mount would be the rock, and then with the decks, Void would be your best bet for your school, and then would be Arctic, then Darkmoor, then whatever. If you don't have any of those 3, then whatever that has a triangle and a hip deck. So that is the setup for the tier 1 balance setup. So now let's get down to the tier 2 setup. Tier 2 setup is just as I stated before with the life. You would switch from spooky to jade, and you would have good res. The only difference is the fact that you would still use your ring for your school. So for example, if you had the void ring, you would have that equipped, and that would give you 93% power pips instead of 95. So you'd be losing 2% power pips and some other stuff, some other stats. That's why spooky is the tier 1 option. But not everyone's going to put a spooky robe on all their characters, and if someone has it, they're most likely going to be using it on their life or their death. I rarely see people use it on other schools, but you know, that's why I recommended a tier 1 option, and tier 2 is the jade. You just lose some minor stats, but other than that, everything's exactly the same. So that is the balance build to go immune. Now let's head on over to myth. So I'm surprised as well that myth can actually go immune. I didn't figure this out till earlier today when I was, you know, searching through all the gear and everything like that. But yes, they can go immune. So it's the same stuff as for the life and balance. Tier 1 option, like I said, this would be the build. Jade hood, you would be using spooky robe instead. Rockstar kicks, same thing with the skull, just make sure you match it. Heartsteel, then you'd use your Nightmare amulet for your school, which would be the myth one in our case for this build. Your ring would be the void myth ring, or if you don't have that, just anything that gives really high power pips, but I'm using the void one for this build. You would still have 95% power pips if you use the void ring. Pet, make sure it matches the set bonus. Mount, rock mount, and then as I stated before with the dex, void would be your best option. If not Skyfarer, then probably Darkmoor, and then just anything that has a triangle and a pit. So that is a tier 1 option for myth. Now, most likely all you guys are not going to use spooky on myth. I don't see spooky used ever on myth, and the couple people who do have it just use it on their life or their death. So you would use Jade Robe, as I stated before, because it's easier to get. You can just do Lord Magus. You can key farm it. Pretty straightforward. And then everything else would be exactly the same. Wand, boots, hats, still exactly the same. Just like I said with your amulet, just make sure you're using the Nightmare amulet of your school. And then the ring would be the Void ring, the 160 version. And then your pet would be 714 to make sure it matches with your wand. Then we have the rock mount, and then like I said, void deck would be your best bet, and then maybe Skyfarer. Then if you don't have either of those, then craft the Darkmoor deck. If you don't have any of those three, then just anything that has a triangle socket and a pip. So those are myth. That is literally the myth build. So the thing is with these builds is ice is the one that's a bit different because they can have perfect power pips, perfect accuracy roughly, and they can have perfect resist. When it comes to life, balance, and myth, that's why they're a little bit struggling, and they can't have perfect power pips. They can get really close. They can have 97 and 94 on the life builds, and then if you're on balance or myth, you can have 95 or 93 depending on the robe you're using. So that's why their builds are a little bit different. Now let's get to the tougher parts. So if you thought those builds were a little bit confusing, now let's actually get into even more limitation on what you can do. So there's two different builds you can use on a death. The issue with death is that they do not have an amulet that gives them 10 resist. The reason why it's so easy to reach immunity on ice is because their amulet gives them 11 resist. So that's why you can move some gear around, and that's why I was able to achieve perfect stats. Life, balance, and myth are able to do that as well, but the thing is they only have options to 10 resist on their amulet. So you're losing that one resist, which actually changes a lot of things around. But for death, it's actually a little bit more worse, and the fact that their amulet, for their Nightmare amulet, only gives them 9 resist, which is really it just really sucks for these builds, because just trying to show off immunity. So their gear is a little bit different. So I'll give you guys the tier 1 option and the tier 2 option. Tier 1 option is going to be using the Jade hat. You're also going to be using the spooky robe. Your boots would be the Rockstar Kicks. Your wand would still be the set bonus wand with the pet. Your theme is still the Heart Steel. Your amulet would be your Nightmare one that gives you 9 resist. But for this showcase, I'm just going to use the Eternal one. It gives me 9 resist, but I'm just going to show it for stat purposes, so we can show off the immunity. But you would have the Nightmare amulet. That's the one that you would want. Your ring is what changes. So now you're not going to be using the Void ring. You're not going to be using any other ring. You have to use Hades Victory Band. The reason why you have to use this is so that you can still have that 100% resist. You can't switch off this with this build, at least. So for the tier 1 option, you have to use this. It's easy to get. You just go in the bazaar and buy it. So I wouldn't really say it's like that big of a difference. The pet is still the same. Make sure it matches your set bonus with your wand. Then your mount would be the rock mount. Your deck, as I stated before, Void deck. If you don't have Void deck, Skyfarer. If you don't have Skyfarer, Darkmoor deck. And if you don't have those 3, anything that has a triangle socket, that gives you a pip. So the reason why you have to use this is literally for its 100%. But that's if you want to use the Spooky Robe. So that's why I have this as a tier 1 option, because technically stat wise, with the Spooky Robe, you have to use the ring. It looks better overall, but I know some people aren't going to use Spooky Robe on their character. So now we have the second option for death, which is the tier 2 option in my opinion. But you gain more pips. So the difference between the tier 1 and the tier 2 option is the tier 1 option gives you more health, more block, more outgoing, if you want to be more of like a supportive. But if you care about pips, the second build, which is the tier 2 option I'm going to give you, gives you more pips. So tier 1 option gives you 85% pips, while the other build that I'm going to show you gives you 92% pips. And the only difference is the hat is exactly the same. The robe, you're switching to Jade. Your boots are still Rockstar Kicks, still same wand, same theme, same amulet. Of course, you want to use the Nightmare one. And then your ring, you would switch to the Void ring for death because it gives you more pips. So if you have the ring, the Void ring 160, you'll have 92% power pips. I did all the math already, so you would use that instead of the Hades Victory Band. And still same pet, mount, and as I stated with the deck, same thing, Void would be your best bet. And you know, same things, Void and Skyfarer. And if you don't have those 2, Darkmoor. And then if you don't have those 3, anything that has a triangle socket. So those are the 2 different builds for death. I know it's a little bit different than what we were talking about earlier, but like I said, it really just comes down to what you have on your death. That's why I have 2 different builds for most classes. So Ice has like 4 different builds that you can use depending on what you have. And then Balance, Life, and Myth are kind of like stuck between those 2 different builds. And then Death is even a little bit worse because you have to actually switch your ring completely if you want to use the Spooky Carnival Robe, which is just not that big a deal. It's easier to get, in my opinion. You just go to the bazaar. So yeah, that's the tier 2 death build. And I have one last build for you guys, which is the only build that Fire gets. Fire doesn't get a lot of options. It kind of sucks for them. The good thing is though, the amulet is very changeable, but when it comes to all the other gear, you're stuck using the same gear. So what you would use on a Fire is you would use the Jade hat, you'd use the Jade robe, you would use the Rockstar Kicks. Wand would still be the exact same as, like I said, make sure it's just with the set bonus with the pet. Your theme is still the same, which is pretty good. Now your amulet, you have 3 different options, and I'm gonna show all of them on screen. You can either use the Cold Rider, or my bad, you can either use the Nightmare amulet, which gives you, I believe, 7 resist, or you can use the Void one, which also gives 7% resist, or you can, if for some reason you open packs during Halloween and you had the Cerberus mount, or not the Cerberus pack, and you open those and you have the Cerberus amulet, you can use that too. So you have 3 different options. It really just comes down to personal preference. I would personally just use the Nightmare one because I just prefer it, but that's just me. If not, you can use the void one, but it really comes down to what you have. If you don't do raids, of course you're not gonna have the void amulet, and then you would have to get the nightmare one from the gauntlet or open packs. And if you don't want to do either of those and you have the Cerberus one from like a while back, that's your other option. But they all give 7% resist. That's the main reason why we're using those. And then the ring, you're forced to use the Hathy ring as well because you need that extra 1% resist. You can't use Spooky Robe on fire, so for that reason you have to use Jade Robe. That's why there's only one option. Just the amulet is interchangeable between those 3 amulets because they give 7% resist, but you're forced to use a ring that gives you 1% extra resist. So that's why we're using this in our builds. So there's that, and then same thing, everything else is exact same as before in the other builds. The 714, the rock mount, and then like I said, void deck is just better in my opinion. It just feels better because of the HP, but depending on your situation, void deck. If not, Skyfair. If not that, then Darkmoor for the copies. If you don't have those 3, then literally anything that has a triangle socket they can socket pips on, and that's that. And you get, I believe, 85% power pips on fire with the immunity build. So they're kind of limited on rocking a certain build. They don't have 2 options because you can't use Spooky Robe on fire because you need the extra resist. So that is it for the video, guys. It's a lot of talking. I hope you guys enjoyed. I kind of spent a lot of time on making this video. I'll have more videos coming out soon where it's like in-depth stuff like this and giving you guys more options whenever I finish recording / editing my other videos. I definitely will be posting those as well. Trying my best trying my best for you guys and trying to get that Wiz content and trying to do stuff that's different. I know we've had immunity builds in the past, but I kind of wanted to update them and give you guys options of what to use. So it's kind of nice that Ice has its own specific build where they can have perfect power pips, perfect accuracy, and you know, they have the resist because they are tanking school. They should have some type of, you know, some type of build. But that is it for me. Let me know in the comments below if you guys know anything that I should change or I could be wrong on. I definitely will be looking at feedback because I literally sat down for like 3-4 hours on stream and literally was just looking at builds while we were watching the KI live today. So it was just more just like looking through spreadsheets and everything like that and seeing what the gear looks like and just kind of making whatever I can. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to leave, like, subscribe, all that type of stuff, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out, guys.